Hi, my name is Linda Bush. I'm Vice Chair of the ZBA, and I'll be chairing the meeting tonight. We have Jared, Tony, Fran, and myself. We have a quorum. And we are on television if anyone is interested. Okay, we'll start by approving the minutes of our May 10th, 2017 meeting. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second?
I will second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I don't think I think the one piece of correspondence we have a notice from the planning board about a site plan application on Route 10. I think Jamie sent it out with our ZBA things, if anyone had any comments on that. Sort of across from Big Y. Okay. Is there anyone here who has any comments on any items that are not on tonight's agenda? It's public speak time.
I just have one quick comment. For the zoning board meetings, which are the second Wednesday of each month, I would ask if Jamie could send an email to the zoning board members and ask them if it's possible to change it to either the first Wednesday or the third Wednesday of each month. I have a conflict every month with the second Wednesday of each month.
We
So-
can have that.
And see if it conflicts with anybody else's.
I'll put out a poll so we get the full, everyone's not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, and now our first and only public hearing, Joseph Masiasik, is that
Close
correct?
enough.
Okay.
You don't let her get away with it.
Seeking a special permit for reconstruction of a single-family residence on a pre-existing non-conforming lot in accordance with Mass General Statutes 40A, Section 6, and East Hampton Zoning Regulations, Section 11. Subject property is located at 55 Hendrick Street and zoned residential rural A, R80. For the record, I'm on the board of directors of the Pascomic Conservation Trust, and we own property within 300 feet of this lot, because we got a notice. I happened to pick up the mail for the trust, so I got the notice. The trust doesn't care about your application one way or another, but I just wanted to say for the record that I'm on the board that owns property. We own property at Broadbrook, the corner there, and an open space piece in the back. The Pascomic is East Hampton Land Trust, for those who don't know what it is. Okay, Mr. Masiasik, would you like to present your application? Oh, before you start, I have a question for staff, because I'm questioning why he needs a variance. I was reading section 11.6, and I read it several times.
Yep.
And to me, that means that this is a legal lot because it was created before it became R80.
Right, but the case law for this has said that it only deals with vacant lots and not previously built on lots. So we were not clear what applied here, which is why it's before the zoning board of appeals. The building inspector did not feel comfortable issuing permits based off that alone, and
Wasn't that change done in 1972?
yes,
That's the date that I picked up on the correspondence that I read.
yes.
That change from 120 feet to 240
Correct.
was done in 1972.
But that just makes the lot non-conforming. The house will have to comply with today's setbacks, any of today's regulations. I just don't see the purpose of this exercise unless someone else, I think it's a legal lot and can legally get a building permit. Would the building official accept our recommendation, or does he want us to grant a special permit? I mean, that's my opinion. We haven't heard from the neighbors yet.
When we looked at this, where it came from Mass General laws, it's word for word, but just case law has shown that it's only for vacant lots that were vacant at the time of the ordinance change.
That's
And
just,
it's-
so
This is like,
So nobody could replace an existing house on a lot that's non-conforming?
If it's knocked down, if it's taken down, then it becomes.
I can see that with a
non-conforming.
non-conforming use, or even a non-conforming structure as far as setbacks, but not the lot being non-conforming. Okay, well, all right, then I guess,
I mean, I didn't, I'm not building commissioner and I don't know.
does anyone else have any opinion about this, or do you want to go ahead with the hearing? Is that the easiest, cleanest way?
Well, I did notice that 11.6 seemed to, just a plain reading, seemed to kind of cover this. At the same time, 11.3, abandonment or non-use, potentially is inconsistent, or could have some inconsistency with the other one. If the lot itself had either been abandoned or not used for 2 years, arguably that would override 11.6, I'm not sure.
But to me, that's a taking, and under the US Constitution, just because something isn't used for 2 years, basically you'd be telling the property owner forever and ever, they can't use this lot. And I don't
Taxes were
think
paid during that
we
time.
can do that. But that's,
Well, that's why, that's why the section with pre-existing non-conforming allows for reconstruction if it's not more non-conforming, if the board grants that special permit. So,
okay, why don't you make your application, because, so we get to see what the other neighbors say about this. You're just getting my opinion.
Okay, well,
I like your opinion.
the lot is owned currently by my uncle Walter Machashik, and my other uncle Stanley Machashik lived in that property for a long period of time. And I spent a lot of time there growing up there as a young child, because they had that property for a long time. My uncle Stanley passed away over a decade ago, and since then my uncle Walter has been taking care of the property, and various things have happened to the house that made it not habitable, and the town required that the house be torn down. So to comply with various town departments that said this house either has to be repaired or torn down, he tore down the house because it was just not an estate that could be fixed because of foundation issues and other things with it. So he decided to tear down the house to avoid any legal issues with the town. And there was a property that me and my wife have been interested for a very long time, and had mentioned that to my uncle. And once the issues were resolved in his mind with the property, because he didn't want to burden me with any of these issues, he tore down the house and figured it'd be fine for me to then build on the property, but not realizing that there were these potential issues with frontage and stuff in there. So when then he came to me and I started looking into there and talking to the various departments here, they said it might be an issue, so that's why I'm here. So I would like to rebuild on my uncle's property and put a house that would be nice and conforming to the standards of the town and would look like it fits in the neighborhood, and they are not planning on doing anything crazy, and you know, remove the excess growth instead of coming there and try to bring it back to what it looked like when I was a kid, and what drew me and my wife to this piece of property, and loved that property since for a very long time. So I would like to try to make that a useful property, and not a blight to the Hendrick Street with the overgrowth that is just very difficult to control with, you know, no house person living there, you know, and stuff. And I would hate for it to turn into a lot that nobody, you know, is using, and then various people turn it into a dumping ground because it's a convenient spot to pull and just throw stuff into there and stuff, because it's not being used in there. So I would love for you to agree with your original assessment that this is not a major issue, and I hopefully none of the neighbors will find a problem with me deciding to put a new house on the property there and bring it back to a usable, nice property for East Hampton and for the street in there. So I don't know if I answered your question, if I need to say more in there.
That's fine. Does anyone on the board have any questions for the applicant? Okay, do any neighbors have any questions for the applicant?
can you you state your name and address for the record?
Barbara Joe, Barbara-J-O, Ralston, 73 Hendrick. I'm the one that the house looks like a blight on the neighborhood at the moment, 'cause my front yard isn't mowed, but that's because my tractor's broken. My first question was about why is this non-conforming? Because you've got very non-conforming in between your property and my property that certainly don't have the amount of frontage that he has.
But they're
So that's.
but they're already built, so
They
that's
were,
the-
right,
yeah, that-
but you were built there,
Yeah.
so. The main question I have is, I saw hazmat there. I know they were taking the asbestos out of the house and the lead paint or whatever, and I know Stanley did a lot of automotive work. So I'm sure they were taking soil samples because of all the dumped oil from cars and trucks and stuff over the years. Has the hazmat cleared that land?
That's something this board could not answer,
They
but
have.
maybe someone else can. They have,
They have, so everything's.
I could not get a demolition permit if they hadn't.
okay.
Okay, because they were scaring everybody for a while there with their tents and stuff. No, I think that's the only other thing, and I don't even like to say this. There's a couple of old cars.
I know, I'm aware of this.
Way in the back.
I have a mission when I get there. I'm aware that this is.
If you want to drag them out through my field, you're welcome to, because I don't know how you'll ever get them out of there.
I'm aware I have a mission ahead of me once I get this property. It's not going to be an overnight, one weekend
No,
job.
it's
I'm hoping, but.
listen, like I say, I've been there between the tree damage from the wind
Yeah.
microburst and everything else. It's difficult, but our two properties are the two
Yeah.
adjoining properties in the back there.
Mm.
And you're welcome to try and drag anything you want out through my field.
Okay, I will.
So,
I'll be
yeah,
knocking-
the only thing I was
What-
concerned about was the pollution part.
As far as I know, there's no current issues with it.
Okay.
And
I'm assuming that they're gonna need a mortgage to build a house, most people do. And a bank's not gonna grant a mortgage unless someone signs off on the environmental aspect of it. I mean, this board doesn't do that, but banks don't lend money if there's a question.
Who is in charge of that? Because like you said, you're part of the
Just the zoning board. we only do
Broad Brook
zoning.
thing that, you know,
Board of Health,
they're.
I would
I'm
assume.
assuming the Board of Health and the state,
Yeah.
yeah.
And again, I talked to the
I have a
board.
writing that says I'm in compliance.
Okay, yep.
Yeah, the banks usually are the ones that make sure all those Ts are crossed, because
Yep.
they're not gonna grant money if it goes down the drain.
And they can't sell the house afterward.
Right.
What?
But the side of the house.
Well, if they're willing to just say can get a building permit, then it doesn't make any difference. We can just get a building permit and build on there because they're not making any stipulations. If I'm understanding, there's no stipulations to the permit, to a building permit.
Size of the.
Yeah.
Well, you had, any house has to comply with zoning. setbacks.
Yeah, but not to that, because there was a question when I was talking to various people whether we would have to build in the original footprint into the size of the house, or whether we would get a more open permit that would allow us to build as long as, again, we're within,
Yeah.
as long as we're within the 50 feet and this
Yeah,
and that.
25 on each side and 50 in the front.
Yeah, but nothing's, because when I talked to the building inspector, it says they may say that you have to build in the original footprint if they wanted to be very particular, or they might give you a permit that just says you can do, build as long as you're following to the current
In
standards.
my opinion, my recommendation would be that as long as you comply with the setbacks of the zone,
Yeah,
you're fine.
Okay.
That's-
That's all I have.
Oh,
okay. So,
okay.
Yeah, you don't want to
Anyone
have
else
to build
have a
a
comment?
house.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Your
I'm
name?
looking at house plans, I'm like, how did I do this? Oh, sorry. Maureen, Maureen, Belliveau, Belliveau. Do I need to do my address?
Please.
49 Hendrick. So I have a couple of questions slash concerns, and I'm not here to be an obstructionist, so, but I do have some concerns regarding just what you brought up. I'm not sure if it's appropriate for me to ask what the intentions are of where you're thinking of placing your new dwelling. I don't know the procedure within this.
In my
Context.
opinion, as long as he or the applicant complies with the zoning of the zone, it's zoned R80. In an R80 zone, the house must be 50 feet front setback, 25 from each side. I think 30 in the rear, but on that lot, the rear is a non-issue because it's such a deep, deep lot. So it has to be at least 25 feet from each side property boundary.
Right, okay.
Definitely, we're planning and not doing anything that would encroach on that. I'm not gonna build any further, if anything, maybe a little further back, but it still would be within the 20 feet of the boundary lines, I'm assuming. 'Cause I have to,
It gets wider.
Yeah, it gets wider as you get
very
back.
quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so that's what we're planning, we're going back a little further so we had a little bit more room to work with. Not that we're planning on building a 3,000 square foot house or anything like that.
And I don't know, again, if it's appropriate for me to ask, the question is, I do have a size that you already have in mind, or, I mean, you say single
Why
family
don't you-
dwelling.
Yeah, well, I was told we can only build a single family, that is not zoned for multifamily, so I can't put in a duplex or anything like that, it has to be
Yeah.
single family.
Right.
And I mean, we're thinking somewhere in the 2,000 square foot range somewhere in there, so yeah.
Okay, and then my other concern is that we're the property right next door.
If I'm
To-
facing their property.
To the left.
To the left.
To
okay.
before.
So, and we're farming that property. So my concern is, which is a greater concern, is what happens to any of that land. And I'm not talking about the dwelling portion itself, because I know that hazmat was there and that's been approved and they have their certificates and all that sort of thing. But I'm concerned about the actual land itself where the cars are buried or anything other potential things are buried. And once that starts to get disturbed, I'm concerned that that's going to start to weep and drain onto my property and affect my,
It would drain the other way, though.
sorry?
It would drain the other way, towards the water treatment plant.
That's downhill slope.
That's downhill.
Are there?
I don't
No,
know.
there-
Okay.
There
I'm
is nothing
assuming-
there.
Okay. He had an environmental assessment and a cleanup done, or somebody did on the property, and it's been signed off. During the building process, like when they dig a hole for a foundation, the inspectors go and look, and if they saw anything like a buried car, they would stop construction, and they would have to remediate whatever's
Right.
there.
But my concern is beyond where the dwelling was. Anything that's beyond that is once that land starts to get disturbed, I mean, if that could potentially be, hate to use this word because it's but brownfield situation now that, because it's contaminated land.
Okay,
You know what I'm saying?
and I would assume that whoever signed off on the front, if there was a problem with disturbance of the rear, they would have put a no disturbance notice on the land records. That's my experience of what they do. Like can I ask, was it the local or state people that were involved in this cleanup?
It was a state.
Okay, when the state gets involved, if there is a potential for disrupting something that's gonna cause an environmental hazard, they won't let you disrupt the earth.
Right.
I mean, as I said earlier, I'm on the Pascomic Conservation Trust, and we built an accessible trail on Mutter Field between East Green
Yep.
Street and East Street. We could not, for archaeological reasons, the trail had to be on the surface. We could not bury anything because the state, some archaeological something. So when there are a lot of rules out there, and if they say you can't disturb, you don't disturb. And I'm assuming if they thought that there was a potential hazard in the rear part of the property that they didn't want disturbed, they would have put a no disturbance notice on it. And if they didn't, that means there's nothing, in my opinion, nothing there.
I know there's a couple.
Buried.
I know there's a Volkswagen or two that are above the soil, but I don't even know if they have engines in them. So I
No,
think
and they're way on my side of the property.
So I don't think there's any buried things that have engines with automotive oil or anything in that I'm aware of. I know there are a couple.
This was pointed out to me And as you say, it's all on the surface.
Okay.
And the guy said, you know, I feel sorry for the guy that has to lock down the trees to get these things out.
Which is gonna be me.
But if they did an environmental assessment on the property and they didn't put a, I don't know what the legal term, put a no disturbance notice on it, I don't think there's anything very there that would cause you problems. And if you see anything during construction and you're concerned, let the city know, by all
Or
means.
the building department.
Yeah, let the building department know,
They'll probably stop everything until they inspect it and,
until they get,
See that-
right.
you know, your concern isn't necessary because, you know, they have enough in their records that the approval and everything.
Does that make you feel better?
Yeah. Yes and no.
I mean, it's a house. It's not like they're gonna put a shopping center there and,
No, I
so they're gonna
understand.
have to disturb a lot of the property. It's a house.
You won't know until it really gets started, you know, that's the
Right.
thing. But you can stop it. I mean, at some point, when you see it started and you've got questions on it, if your questions are legitimate, they'll stop.
Yeah.
They'll just put a cease.
And you might wanna, before they start, talk to Jackie Duda, the head of the health department, and let her know your concerns.
Yeah.
So that she will, watch over
Be more
the
aware of it.
construction, in addition to the building department, so you have another set of eyes.
That's a great idea.
Jackie's aware of it.
Yeah,
She's
that-
familiar with
yeah,
it.
that's what I mean, so, yeah, she would be aware of that, and so she would, you know, as a neighbor, you have every right to express your concern and have as many people looking out for your concerns as you can.
And health departments are appropriate people to be on the lookout for you.
Did you have any other questions?
Nope.
Thanks.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments? Does the board have any comments? Well, just to be clean and make sure the building official doesn't give the applicant a hard time, I'll recommend that we grant a special permit, even though I think section 11.6 covers it, just to cover all the bases.
No.
So that there's no problem for the applicant at some future date. Okay, should I make a motion, or would somebody like to make a motion?
Can you just state that that it's not more non-conforming and the rest
Oh.
of that? I think just to go through it.
Yeah, well, I personally don't believe that this requires a special permit because the lot was created prior to the R80 zoning designation on it. And the way I read 11.6, the applicant should be able to get a building permit. But there is case law that raises the question because there was a house on it and they intentionally took the house down, even though the house needed to come down. So I recommend that we grant a special permit for 55 Hendrick Street for a single-family residential structure to be built on the lot. And I believe that the applicant complies with all the special permit criteria because it will conform to all the ordinance of the city of East Hampton, the laws of Massachusetts. There aren't any city amenities. They're minimizing detrimental or offensive uses. There are no natural, scenic, or historic features on the site. There are no traffic impacts. That's one thing I didn't ask. Does this property have municipal water and sewer?
Yes.
Okay, that is one good thing for the neighbor, that the properties have municipal water and sewer. There are no wetlands in the area of the house, although I believe it is part of an aquifer, so that's why we want to make sure that everything is cleaned up. This will not have any impact on city's water or sewage because it's a single-family house. There's no off-street loading or unloading. It's a single-family house, there's no need to integrate it into the existing landscape. It's a single-family house, so excessive vegetation is not going to be removed. The house will comply with the zoning of an R80 zone. During construction, the applicant will use proper sedimentation and erosion controls, and a single-family house will not create a nuisance or air and water pollution. Is there a second?
Can we still just do the findings for 11.12? I just,
She has to type it in to say it.
I just want to be able to write the decision knowing that you guys did this.
Okay, where, I'm gonna go back one page. But 11.12,
That's what you're permitting.
the ZBA finds that this change will not intensify any existing nonconformities because the lot's already there, or create any new nonconformities which are going to comply with the building setbacks. And the structure will not cause anything to become substantially more detrimental than the existing non-conforming lot. Because the house was there for 50 years, another house is going to go on the exact same lot. And we're not creating any new non-conformities.
Thank you.
Is there a second?
I second it.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. You're approved. Now, you will get a letter from the city. There is a 20-day appeal period, so a neighbor could appeal this decision, and everything that you have to do will be detailed in the letter, the approval letter. And you will end up having to file a copy of your approval on the land records in Northampton, Hampshire County Land Records, yes. But it'll all be detailed in the letter you will receive, your approval letter.
Okay,
So it'll take about 2 weeks for the decision to be
finalized.
finalized, and then the 20-day appeal period will start after
Okay.
that.
And you can't file on the land record until after the appeal period.
Okay.
Okay. And I think that was it on our agenda.
Mhm.
So, can I have a motion to close the meeting?
Make a motion to close the meeting.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. See everyone next month.
Not us.